At the start of the movie, we meet Pharaoh Olivetti, a billionaire who made his own fortune. He wasn't born into wealth. He grew up in Italy, close to his father. As he got older, Pharaoh moved to the United States and worked hard to become very successful. Despite his wealth and numerous relationships, his father worried that Pharaoh might never find true love. One day, while Pharaoh is with a friend, he gets a call from his mother in Italy. She tells him his father is dying, so Pharaoh rushes back to Italy. When he arrives, he and his father share an emotional moment. Struggling to speak, his father makes a final request. Pharaoh must leave his riches behind and live like a homeless person for a month. Though Pharaoh initially hesitates, he agrees to fulfill his father's wish. After his father's death, Pharaoh prepares to leave his life of luxury. He tells his assistant he'll be away for a month, knowing it will be a challenging decision. To avoid being recognized, he switches identities with his driver, Claude. On his journey, Pharaoh encounters an arrogant passenger who causes trouble for a flight attendant. In a humorous turn, the attendant smacks a potato 3 times after the passenger complained about it, causing everyone to laugh. Pharaoh arrives in the city with just a bag and catches a ride with a truck driver. Meanwhile, the rude man from the airplane takes a cab where he finds a polite and mysterious woman already inside. Pharaoh, trying to find work, visits a local shop but is turned away after the owner looks at him strangely. He then heads to a bar where he helps himself to free snacks meant for customers. At the bar, a woman approaches Pharaoh and asks about his job and where he's staying. Pharaoh answers vaguely, which frustrates her and makes her leave. Soon after, another woman, who seems eager for attention, sits next to Pharaoh and learns he needs a place to stay for the night. Pharaoh ends up at an apartment with this woman, named Peta, who is now in revealing clothes and tries to seduce Pharaoh. Pharaoh makes excuses, and they end up going to sleep. Unable to sleep due to Peta's loud snoring, Pharaoh steps outside and sees Diane, the woman from the cab. Diane wakes up and calls Peta, who then kicks Pharaoh out of the apartment, even though both women later admit they found him attractive. While Pharaoh wandered the streets alone, 2 thugs tried to rob him. He fought them off and hid, but the woman from earlier called the police on him. The cops arrested Pharaoh and put him in a local jail cell. He called his assistant to buy shares worth $50 million, but then he had a run-in with a dangerous inmate, leading to a fight. The cops removed the inmate, but Pharaoh struggled with the situation. The next morning, Pharaoh asked the cops if he could stay until breakfast, but they ignored him, and with the thugs from the night before in custody, Pharaoh's story checked out. Hungry and desperate, he tried to trade 50 cents and a pack of rubber bands for food, but was unsuccessful. Meanwhile, the mysterious woman from earlier walked home, followed by a creepy man. She nervously called for her mother once inside. Her mother suggested meeting a man who had been asking her out, but she declined, revealing her fear of dating due to recent events. Later that night, Pharaoh sat on a bench and encountered a strange woman who made him leave. The next morning, he searched for food and asked for something for 50 cents at a hot dog stand. The vendor, seeing his situation, gave him a free hot dog. While Pharaoh read the newspaper for job opportunities, he was hit by a car. The driver, moved by Pharaoh's story, decided to help him. He took Pharaoh to his boss, who was looking for a driver. Pharaoh walked into the house and witnessed an argument between the boss and his wife. The man offered Pharaoh $600 for driving and other tasks, while his wife watched him with interest. Their spoiled daughter then asked for $500, which her father gave away easily. The man asked Pharaoh for references and told him to leave, but his wife hired him for the night as a bartender. At the bar, Pharaoh faced rude treatment and was also asked to drop a drunk man off at his home. Pharaoh instructed his assistant to give a $5,000 bonus to each employee. After seeing news that they nearly lost a court case, back at his boss's house, Pharaoh found Mrs. Curtis waiting for him. Soon, the drunk daughter showed up, trying to use Pharaoh. Mr. Curtis then entered and asked Pharaoh to sit with him. Pharaoh refused, claiming he might have a disease, and told the daughter to leave. Mrs. Curtis then arrived with a smile. The next morning, their dog caused more trouble, showing the family's desperation. Pharaoh went to his boss's office and saw the same woman from the apartment. Everyone admired his charm. Later, the woman received a call from the boss, asking her to meet him at a funeral. Pharaoh drove her there, and during the ride, she scolded him for looking at her in the mirror. At the funeral, they had coffee together. Though their initial conversation was awkward, it improved, and Pharaoh suggested she start dating again, since she had lost her husband David 9 years ago. They talked for about 2 hours and showed mutual interest. She also mentioned wanting to leave her job due to the bad boss and offered to lend Pharaoh money, which he declined. Before leaving her at her parents' house, they shared a kiss while her parents watched. They planned to go on a date the following Tuesday. Diane's parents were unhappy to learn that Pharaoh was just a regular driver. The next day, Diane went on the date with Pharaoh while juggling her project work, as Mr. Curtis had assigned her extra tasks. A few days later, Mr. Curtis's daughter visited the office, which led Mr. Curtis to summon Pharaoh and fire him, accusing him of improper behavior with his daughter, though Pharaoh was innocent. Diane was upset by the way Pharaoh was treated and reacted strongly, using a curse word that shocked everyone. Diane then invited Pharaoh to dinner with her parents. During the dinner, Pharaoh explained what happened at the office, making her parents worried about his lack of a job. They were unaware that Pharaoh was actually a billionaire. Pharaoh mentioned he might be moving to California soon, which slightly reassured her parents. They ended the evening enjoying ice cream together. Later, Pharaoh called Diane's friend to tell her about their relationship, surprising her friend. Pharaoh said goodbye to Mr. Curtis and his wife. The next day, Diane proposed starting a new agency with the savings she had, but only if Pharaoh became her partner. They discussed business plans, and Pharaoh agreed to the idea. As they celebrated their new venture, it was clear that they were falling in love. On their way back, Pharaoh told Diane he had never met anyone like her before. She opened up about searching for answers after her husband's death and being contacted by a mysterious person. This person later died from a drug overdose. After comforting Diane, the scene shifts to 2 weeks later, where their new agency is thriving and generating significant revenue. While relaxing in the park, Pharaoh and Diane discussed their new agency. Diane suggested moving it to California, but Pharaoh was worried about the current location. Pharaoh's assistant then called, warning that he needed to attend a court session to keep control of the company. Diane confessed her love as they watched fighter planes. At court, Pharaoh arrived just in time to win the case. Afterward, his unexplained absence upset Diane, leading her to leave the office in distress, with Pharaoh unable to catch her. Diane's mother didn't pass along Pharaoh's calls after Diane dropped her phone in the mud. When Diane arrived at the office, Pharaoh was missing, and it seemed he had left. Meanwhile, Mr. Curtis learned from Pharaoh's helper about the $50,000 check and Pharaoh's billionaire status. Pharaoh told his mother about Diane, who advised him to see her. Pharaoh then explained his situation to Diane, excluding his billionaire status. They both traveled to California, where the real Claude, Pharaoh's driver, picked them up. Pharaoh told Diane he was a billionaire, fulfilling her dreams. He also suggested that they give away their company shares to their agents. Diane was confused when she learned Pharaoh's true identity as Pharaoh Olivetti, which shocked her. Upon reaching Pharaoh's grand mansion, Pharaoh gave Diane a tour. Diane mentioned looking for a job, but Pharaoh reassured her that he had different plans. He expressed his love and commitment to her, stating that since she had made him her business partner, he wanted her to be his partner in everything he owned. They got married in a grand ceremony and lived happily ever after.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and stay connected with us.